Hi, my name's Sarah Murphy, and today I'm going to be presenting my research on the Salem witch trials and their portrayal in Arthur Miller's play, The Crucible. I will begin by talking about the Salem witch trials, a period of madness. So to begin, what were they? The Salem witch trials took place from the month of June through September of 1692. During this time, 20 men and women were convicted of witchcraft and executed in Gallows Hill, a plain near Salem Village, Massachusetts, as a punishment for their supposed supernatural transgressions. Today, this period of hysteria is famously known under the name of the Salem witch trials, and continues to be a bewildering source of discussion amongst people over 300 years later. One of the most renowned interpretations of this event is Arthur Miller's play, The Crucible. But in order to understand the views and motivations that led to these outrageous trials, one must first examine the social context and popular beliefs of this era. Tension in Salem, setting the scene. In 1689, a war known to colonists as King William's War erupted between the English and French-American colonies. This resulted in devastation for New York, Nova Scotia, and Quebec. As a result of this, many English refugees were sent to Salem Village in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. But the startling increase in population posed a great strain on Salem's resources. The additional stress that this created only aggravated the pre-existing rivalry between the wealthy families living in the port of Salem and the poorer agriculture-based communities. Since this social divide was so substantial, there were two families that took charge, the Porters and the Putnams. While the Porters were quite happy with their prosperity, especially in comparison to the poorer families, the Putnams desired autonomy for the farming community. With this increased tension, people were constantly looking for ways to take revenge on those who had opposed them. Beliefs that fueled the mania. In addition to the social strain already present in Salem town, the religion-based fear of evil supernatural forces, such as witches, was coming back full force. Its first major appearance had been in 14th century Europe, but it had returned. Since people possessed such strong beliefs in the supernatural, they really believed that the devil's practice of giving certain beings, which were known as witches, the power to harm others, was very present in their society. This, coupled with the after effects of the war, made people extremely suspicious, resentful, and fearful towards outsiders and even their own neighbors. It was this crazy fear that ultimately resulted in the madness that was the Salem witch trials. The witch hunts, the hysteria spreads. The inciting event. In January of 1692, 9-year-old Betty Paris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams, the daughter and niece of Reverend Samuel Paris, began experiencing random outbursts and fits. These included violent contortions, diving under furniture, and uncontrollable screaming. A local doctor by the name of William Griggs examined them and was unable to find any medical reason for these conditions. However, upon learning of the girls' indulgence in fortune-telling, Griggs diagnosed them with bewitchment. Shortly after this, many other young girls in the community began to exhibit similar symptoms. This list included, but was not limited to, Ann Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, Elizabeth Hubbard, Mary Walcott, and Mary Warren, all of whom had taken part in the same supernatural dealings as Betty and Abigail. Looking back with the perspective of modern science. With the knowledge developed by modern research, professionals have proposed many different medical theories that could explain the strange symptoms that were being exhibited by these young girls. Some possible explanations for their strange behavior include a combination of asthma, encephalitis, Lyme disease, epilepsy, child abuse, delusional psychosis, or convulsive ergotism. The last disease is caused by consumption of cereal products that contain the fungus ergot, which can make many of the same symptoms as these girls were showing. This includes vomiting, choking, fits, hallucinations, and the sense of something crawling on your skin. Although many of these symptoms do indeed match those they were exhibiting, there's no way of ascertaining that these medical conditions were the cause of their illness, and it remains a mystery. False accusations. Without the medical knowledge present today, Paris was absolutely convinced that sorcery was the cause of this affliction. Pressured to identify their tormentor, Betty and Abigail claimed to have been bewitched by Tituba, their slave from Barbados, as well as Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne, two women of rather poor reputations. In late February, their arrest warrants were issued. Even though Good and Osborne both claimed innocence, Tituba eventually confessed from fear and told the magistrates what they apparently wanted to hear. She and many unnamed people had made deals with the devil. The witch hunts. Tituba's confession was regarded as proof that there were more witches at large in the community, and fear was abundant. Furthermore, people began making accusations motivated by hidden agendas, jealousy, and revenge, resulting in insane numbers of convictions. The court in charge of these cases was presided over by Judges Haythorne, Sewall, Stoughton, and a jury. The executions. The first conviction was made against Bridget Bishop on June 2nd, and she was hanged 8 days later on Gallows Hill in Salem town. As the madness continued, 5 people were hanged in July, 5 more in August, and 8 in September. In addition to this, 7 others died in jail, and Giles Corey was tortured to death. The portrayal of the trials in Arthur Miller's play, The Crucible. Arthur Miller's goal. Fascinated by the horrifying Salem witch trials, Arthur Miller based his play The Crucible off of the event and released it in 1953. His goal was to show how people had failed to learn from history, and as a result, similar hysteria was being repeated with the Red Scare of the 1950s. Differences for dramatic effect. The majority of the play is historically accurate. However, certain details are altered to provide dramatic effect. For instance, at the beginning of the play, Paris says, "My daughter and my niece I discovered dancing like heathen in the forest." In reality, Tituba did tell the girls voodoo tales from her native land, and they did speak of fortunes. However, there was never any such incident of the girls leaving the community and chanting spells, let alone them being discovered by Paris. John Proctor as a tragic hero. Miller's imagination is also used when he adjusts John Proctor's character so that it follows the stages of the tragic hero as written according to Aristotle. In order to establish Proctor's hubris and hamartia, plot is changed so that Proctor has an error in judgment that is committing adultery by having an affair with Abigail. During the trial, Proctor reveals this transgression, saying, "I have known her, sir, I have known her," referring to Abigail. In reality, Abigail was only an 11-year-old girl and had never had any sort of romantic relationship with Proctor. It is, however, accurate that he was convicted a witch and executed. The conclusion of the insanity. The madness comes to its end. In Arthur Miller's play, he does not address the aftermath and resolution of the Salem witch trials. This is most likely because the main protagonist, John Proctor, does not survive to see them. However, the madness finally began to come to its close in September of 1692, when the use of spectral evidence was declared inadmissible, and convictions therefore ceased. However, much damage had already been done. By the time the last of the accused witches were released from jail in May of 1693, 20 people had been executed, and nearly 200 had been wrongfully accused of witchcraft. Today, the terrifying tale of the Salem witch trials serves as a warning of how fear can drive individuals to commit unthinkable acts, as well as a reminder of the dangers of trusting blindly. Works cited. The sources that I used for this research project included A Brief History of the Salem Witch Trials by Jess Blumberg, History of the Salem Witch Trials by Rebecca Brooks, The Witchcraft Trials in Salem, an account by Professor Douglas O. Linder, The Crucible by Arthur Miller, The Salem Witch Trials by Jeff Wallenfelt, and The Salem Witch Trials by History.com.